Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiv Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiv Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगतपते गोपेश गोपी कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कंचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदानेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरि प्रिये। तो श्री राधे गोलोकानंद भगवान की जय
जय।
हरे कृष्णा
भैया, हरे
Hare
कृष्णा
Krishna
everyone.
everybody.
हरे कृष्णा सोहम
Hare Krishna.
कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा निशा
Hare Krishna.
ऑलराइट सो कल हम लोग 32nd श्लोक पढ़ रहे थे 6th कैंटो का एंड काफी इम्पोर्टेंट श्लोक है और इसका पर्पट भी बहुत अच्छा है, तो आई थॉट विल जस्ट स्टार्ट फ्रॉम 32nd. So सृजामि तन्नि युक्तो अहम हरो हरति तद्वशः विश्वम पुरुष रूपेण परिपाति त्रिशक्ति धृक. सो ब्रह्मा जी कह रहे हैं बाय हिज विल, हिज इज सुप्रीम लॉर्ड श्री कृष्णा, बाय हिज विल आई क्रिएट. सृजामि तन्नि युक्तो अहम, I create. Lord Shiva destroys. Yeah, Haro Harti Tadvasha, and he himself, in his eternal form as the personality of Godhead, maintains everything. Vishwam Purush Rupena, and then Paripati Tri Shakti Dhrika. That is, he is the powerful controller of these three energies. Yeah, तो Lord Brahma Shiva भगवान श्री कृष्ण के बारे में बता रहे हैं. हरे कृष्णा रसिक श्याम प्रभु. So this purport is so important, so we are going to read this. Yeah, Soham, would you start please?
The conception of one without a second is clearly confirmed here. The one is Lord Vasudeva, and only by his different energies and expansions or different manifestations, both in the material and in the spiritual worlds, maintained in the material world also. Lord Vasudeva is everything as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 7.19. Vasudeva Saram Iti, everything is Vasudeva only in the Vedic times. After the same, Vasudeva is held to be
Supreme, yeah. So Vasudeva Sarvam Iti is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Now let's continue reading, Sachin.
It is said in the Vedas, Vasudeva Paro Brahma Na Chanyo Ratho Si Tatvaha. In fact, there is no greater truth than Vasudeva. And Lord Krishna affirms the same truth in the Bhagavad Gita 7.7. Mataha Parataram Nanaya. There is nothing above me, Lord Krishna. That is Lord Krishna. So the conception of oneness, as overly stressed by the impersonalists, is also accepted by the personalist devotee of the Lord. The difference is that impersonalist denies personality in the ultimate issue, whereas the devotee gives more importance to the personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Ajay?
Srimad Bhagvatam
also explains this truth in the verse under discussion. Lord Vasudeva is one without a second, but because he is all powerful, he can expand himself as well as display his omnipotencies. The Lord is described here as omnipotent by three energies, Trishakti Dharak. So primarily his three energies are eternal, marginal, and external. This external energy is also displayed in three modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance.
Tarun?
Similarly, the internal potency is also displayed in three spiritual modes, Samvit, Sandhini, and Viladini. The marginal potency or the living entities is also spiritual, Prakritam Vidhi Me Param. But the living entities are never equal to the Lord. The Lord is Nirastha, Samya, Atisaya. In other words, no one is greater than or equal to the Supreme Lord. So the living entities, including even such great personalities as Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, are all subordinate to the Lord. In the material world also, in his eternal form of Vishnu, he maintains and controls all the affairs of the demigods, including Brahma and Shiva. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, right? So this paragraph proves again and again what Lord Brahma is saying. Yeah. And in all the scriptures and everywhere, this truth again and again has been emphasized, right? Like Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. And I think the other important thing which is given here is we saw like, so Lord has three energies, right? Potencies, internal, marginal, and external potency. और पिछले श्लोक में हमने देखा था कि इंटरनल पोटेंसी से we have the spiritual sky, right? The Bekunt cloak and the spiritual planets. That is 75% of the whole thing. Yeah. Only 25% is generated by his external energy. And that external energy is this whole material nature. And then you have the marginal energy, which is the marginal potency. That's the living entity. So that's in between. And it's mentioned that the living entity, right? Like the soul essentially, we have a choice where we want to live, whether we want to be staying in the spiritual sky or we get conditioned and come here in the material world and stay here, right? So that's living entity. But the point I wanted to make was, so those are three things. And then the external energy, jo hum log padhe the, right, is influenced by three gunas, satogun, rajogun, and tamogun. Yeah, that we read. Satogun, tamogun, that's the mode of goodness, patience, and ignorance. But the new fact which is coming here is the internal potency. And the internal potency is also displayed in three spiritual modes. So Samvit, Sandhini, and Haldini. So that is, I think that's something to remember. Okay. And then of course we saw the marginal potency, the living entities, is also spiritual, right? Because the soul is related to the super soul. So that's why the marginal potency is also spiritual. But of course, the living entities are never equal to the Lord. Like we are the soul and he's the super soul. Yeah. So I think that's why this purport is so important. And you know, even the shlok in Srimad Bhagvatam is really wonderful. I mean, it clarifies so many things. Tarun? Tarun, pardon?
Iti te vihitam tata yadedam anuprayaschi nanyad bhagavate kinchid bhavyaham sad asad atmakam. My dear son, whatever you inquired from me, I have thus explained unto you, and you must know for certain that whatever there is, either as cause or as effect, both in the material and spiritual worlds, is dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So who is saying this?
Brahma.
Lord Brahma, yeah. And to whom? My dear son.
To Naradji.
To Naradji, right? Dev Rishi Narad. So Lord Brahmaji is saying this, and this is being recited by Sukdev Goswamiji to Parikshit Maharaj. Yeah. And that is further being recited by the Sad Goswamiji Maharaj to all the Rishi Munis at Naimisaranya. So that's how the Srimad Bhagvatam is coming directly from Lord Brahma's and Devrishi Narad. Yeah. So yeah, and again it's being mentioned here, like everything is dependent on Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we saw in Brahma Samhita, right, it was mentioned Ishvara Param Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karan Karnam. So this we have seen again and again. And again in Bhagavad Gita, right, Lord Krishna himself has mentioned that Aham Sarvasya Prabhao Mata Sarvam Parvartate Iti Matva Bhajante Mam Buddha Bhav Samanvita. So the original primal cause is Vigraha, the personal and the impersonal spiritual effulgence. Brahma Jyoti is also an effect of the Supreme Brahma, Lord Krishna. Yeah. Anilji?
जी न भारती मेंग मृषोपलक्ष्यते न वै क्वचिन्मे मनसो मृषा गतिः न मे हृषिकाणि पतन्नत्य सत्पथे यन्मे हृदोत्कण्ठयवता धृतो हरिः. O Narad, because I have caught hold of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, with great zeal, whatever I say has never proved to have been false, nor is the progress of my mind ever deterred, nor are my senses ever degraded by temporary attachment to matter. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So now Lord Brahma ji is giving his secret. Why is he Lord Brahma? Right? And he says, I have never proved to have been false, right? Me anga mrisho uplakshate. And then nor is the progress of my mind ever deterred. Mansho mrisha gati hai. And then he's saying, my senses are never degraded by temporary attachment to the matter. Right? The senses of the Brahma, like na me rishi kani patantate satpate. And why is all this? Why is all this? Because I have caught hold of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. Yeah, Yanme Ridhut Kanthavata Dhito Hari hai. So that is what Lord Brahma is saying. I think something for us to pick up. Actually, so let's just read some of it because it's pretty important. So, Rinaji?
Yeah. Lord Brahma is the original speaker of Vedic wisdom to Narad, and Narad is the distributor of transcendental knowledge all over the world through his various disciples like Vyasadeva and others. The followers of Vedic wisdom accept the statements of Brahmaji as gospel truth, and transcendental knowledge is thus being distributed all over the world by the process of disciplic succession from time immemorial since the beginning of the creation. Lord Brahma is the perfect liberated living being within the material world, and any sincere student of transcendental knowledge must accept the words and statements of Brahmaji as infallible. The Vedic knowledge is infallible because it comes down directly from the Supreme Lord unto the heart of Brahma. And since he is the most perfect living being, Brahmaji is always correct to the letter. And this is because Lord Brahma is a great devotee of the Lord who has earnestly accepted the lotus feet of the Lord as the supreme truth.
Yeah, so very clearly mentioned. Um, and actually, so like Lord Brahmaji, what it is being said is Mam Chayo Vyabhicharan Bhakti Yogan Sevte So Gunan Samathiyeten Brahma Bhuvaya Kalpate, which means anyone therefore who is earnestly serious in heart and soul about being in intimate touch with the personality of Godhead in the relationship of transcendental loving service will always be infallible in words and action. And the reason is because the Supreme Lord is the absolute truth. So like Lord Brahmaji, all of us, if we are serious in our heart, in our soul, and devoted to personality of Godhead Lord Sri Krishna, and it's saying that a grain of devotion is more valuable than tons of faithlessness. So we can do all these other things and all that, but a small devotion is still much more valuable. Anisha?
सोऽहं समाम्नायमयस्तमोपयः प्रजापतिनाम भिवन्दितः पतिः आस्थाय योगं निपुणं समाहितस्तं राध्यगच्छं यत आत्मसम्भवः. Although I am known as the great Brahma, perfect in the disciplic succession of Vedic wisdom, and although I have undergone all austerities and I am an expert in mystic powers and self-realization, and although I am recognized as such by the great forefathers of the living entities who offer me respectful obeisances, still cannot understand him, the Lord, the very source of my birth. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. And so नारद जी ने जो पूछा था कि आप इतनी तपस्या करते हो, right? You go through so many austerities, and who is the real creator of this world, right? So, and that's what Brahmaji is replying, that I'm so expert in everything, yeah, but I still cannot understand him, the Lord, the very source of my birth. And again, I mean, those purports are really great. There's so much in-depth knowledge in those, right? Whenever you get a chance, can read. Sachin?
न तो अस्म्यहं तच्चरणं समीयुषां भवच्छिन्दं स्वस्त्ययनः सुमङ्गलं यो यात्मत्मा याविभवं स्म पर्यगाद यथा नभः स्वान्तमथापरे कुतः. Therefore, it is best for me to surrender unto his feet, which alone can deliver one from miseries of repeated births and death. Such surrender is all auspicious and allows me to perceive all happiness. Even the sky cannot estimate the limits of its own expansion. So what can others do when the Lord himself is unable to estimate his own limits? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, right? So to really try to understand this, what is Lord Brahma is saying is that therefore, because no one can understand him fully, it is best me to surrender unto his feet. So, nato ashyamyaham tat charanam samiyusham. Yeah. And why? Which alone can deliver one from the miseries of repeated birth and death. That is the bhav chidam. And swasakti yananam sumangalam means such surrender is then all auspicious and allows one to perceive all happiness. And then Lord Brahma further says that even the sky cannot estimate the limits of its own expansion. So what can others do when Lord himself is unable to estimate his own limits? Yeah, so the best thing to do is just surrender without getting into all these materialistic discussions. Yeah, and then again, it just in so much detail, it's mentioned here how and And the one other important thing, it is said in the scriptures that Brahma Sokhyam Ta Anantam. Anantam is spiritual happiness is unlimited. So in the material world, we are trying to search for all the happiness and everything else and all that. But really in the spiritual world, the happiness is unlimited. Arinaji?
Naham na yuyam yadritam gatim vidurna vamadevah kimuta pare sura tanmayaya mohita buddhayastvidam vinirmitam tatmasamam vichakshmahe. Since neither Lord Shiva nor you nor I could ascertain the limits of spiritual happiness, how can other demigods know it? And because all of us are bewildered by the illusory this manifested cosmos according to our individual ability. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, right? So since neither Lord Shiva nor you nor I could ascertain the limits of the spiritual happiness. Yeah, clearly mentioned in Srimad Bhagvatam. Na aham, like myself, na yuyam, right? Na Vamdeva is Lord Shiva. Yeah, none of them can explain this spiritual happiness. So what happens is, based on our ability, we can see only the manifested cosmos according to our individual ability. So whatever ability we have is only that much we can think and think. But once we surrender to the Godhead, then based on His blessings, right, His grace, we can get some experience and some relish the the Sachidanand Swarup. तो शिक्षा प्रभु जी पढ़ेंगे आप?
यस्यावतार कर्माणि गायन्ते हस्य मदादयः न यं विन्दन्ति तत्त्वेन तस्मै भगवते नमः. Lord, let us offer our respectful obeisances unto that Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose incarnations and activities are chanted by us for glorification. So he can hardly be fully known as he is.
Yeah, right. So though he can hardly be fully known as he is, however, what do we do? Whose incarnations and activities are chanted us? That's how we know for glorification. Yeah. So Yasha Avatar Karmani Gayanti Krishna Radhegovind. And so what do we do? Let's offer our respectful obeisances. Tasme Bhagavate Namaha. And Sachin, will you read?
It is said that the transcendental name, form, quality, pastimes, paraphernalia, personality, etc. cannot possibly be perceived by the gross materialistic senses. But when the senses are purified by the process of hearing, chanting, remembering, and worshipping the lotus feet of holy deity, etc., the Lord reveals himself proportionately to the advancement of the quality of devotional service. Ye yatha mama prapadayante. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, right? So important, right? Like what we are just talking about is when the senses are purified by the process of hearing, chanting, and remembering, right? So we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. We are reading Srimad Bhagvatam. So slowly and slowly, by worshipping the lotus feet of the holy deity, right? Lord reveals himself proportionately to the advancement of the quality of devotional service. So as quality of our devotional service improves, as we do more and more chanting, slowly and slowly Lord reveals himself and we can experience that. Yeah. And the conclusion is that one cannot know the Supreme Personality of Godhead fully by any method, but he can be seen and felt partially by the devotional service process of hearing, chanting, etc. Yeah. So that's why we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So I think we are going to pause here. Very nice purport. And I know we have 2 minutes. Rasikshan Prabhu ji, आप कुछ कहना चाहेंगे? Yeah.
बस 1 मिनट के लिए। तो ऊपर जो हम लोग पॉपट में पढ़ रहे थे ना कि जीवात्मा लिविंग एंटिटी इज नॉट इक्वल टू द लॉर्ड। उसका एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल है, जो समुद्र है, समुद्र का एक बूंद जल पानी लिया जाए तो क्वालिटी के हिसाब से इट इज इक्वल टू द पूरा इंटायर सी का पानी के जैसा है, लेकिन क्वांटिटिवली इट इज नॉट इक्वल टू इंटायर सी। उसी तरह से हम जीवात्मा क्वालिटी वाइज वी आर इक्वल टू द लॉर्ड, बट क्वांटिटिवली वी आर वेरी लिमिटेड। तो एग्जांपल हो गया। और 37 नंबर में हम लोगों ने ऊपर पढ़ा ना कि गॉड का जो शक्ति, कृष्ण का जो शक्ति है, ही कैन नॉट एस्टिमेट इट। हम लोगों ने पढ़ा, भगवान उसको अपने शक्ति का भी पार नहीं पा सकते, उसका ताह नहीं लगा सकते। तो उसके बारे में एक बार ऐसा हुआ, अमेरिका में एक प्रेस रिपोर्टर ने प्रभुपाद जी से पूछा कि भगवान जो है कृष्ण, आप बताते हैं जैसे, वो क्या कुछ ऐसा एक बहुत बड़ा पहाड़ या शिला बना सकते हैं जो कभी उठा नहीं सकते हैं? तो प्रभुपाद जी ने कहा, बहुत ब्रिलियंटली आंसर दिया, हाँ वो जरूर एक ऐसा बड़ा पहाड़ बना सकते हैं जो नहीं उठा सकते हैं, बट एट द सेम टाइम ही विल लिफ्ट इट। तो गॉड कैन नॉट बी लिमिटेड। तो प्रभुपाद जी ने इस एग्जांपल में दोनों सिद्ध किया, भगवान सब कुछ कर सकता है, एट द सेम टाइम कुछ भी नहीं है जो उनको लिमिट लगा सकता है।
Thank you, Hare Krishna Prabhu. We have less than 1 minute, so we'll just hear chanting and I will see you tomorrow. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.